You ever just feel buried under news alerts? Like everything's shouting, but you're not quite getting the full picture of what it all really means.
Yeah, totally. It's just noise sometimes.
Exactly. So that's what we're here for. You, our listener, gave us this really fascinating mix of news clips, articles, YouTube bits.
A real variety this time.
Right. And our job, our mission, is to basically cut through all that chaos for you. Find the important stuff, the signal and the noise.
Think of it as your personalized briefing. We take this pile you've given us. I mean, it covers everything from like presidential health, global trips, even severe weather.
Yeah.
And we're going to pull out the key takeaways, maybe spot some connections that aren't obvious at first glance. Hopefully give you a few of those aha moments.
Okay, so let's dive in. First up, a topic that's definitely been getting a lot of airtime, President Biden's health.
Mm.
One of the sources you sent pointed to a pretty attention-grabbing statement by Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel on MSNBC.
Oh, yeah, I saw that one. He was talking about President Biden's prostate cancer diagnosis.
And he suggested it's likely been there since, the start of his presidency, back in 2021.
That's right. And Dr. Emanuel, being an oncologist, his point was really about the timeline. He seemed pretty adamant that this kind of cancer doesn't usually spread to the bone in just like 100 or 200 days.
Right, so that immediately makes you wonder, well, when did they know?
Exactly. When did Biden know? When did the White House know? Was information held back? Those are the questions it raises.
And, presidents get those annual health checks. They're pretty thorough, especially at his age. Prostate exams would be standard procedure.
And Dr. Emanuel brought that up, too. He sounded skeptical that a Gleason 9 cancer, which is, a more aggressive type, would just be missed.
Especially with PSA levels, you'd expect those to be elevated, wouldn't you?
You'd think so. That's the prostate-specific antigen test. Elevated levels are often a flag for prostate issues, including cancer. So, yeah, it raises questions about those past checkups, or at least what was reported.
It sort of puts that moment back in 2022 in a new light, remember, when President Biden mentioned having cancer.
Oh, yeah. Everyone kind of brushed it off as him talking about old skin cancer treatments.
But now, you wonder, was that maybe a slip-up? Revealing something bigger they weren't talking about publicly?
It's possible. And this is where it gets even more complex, because this physical health discussion seems to run parallel to chatter about his cognitive health.
Right. We also saw sources mentioning that book, Original Sin,
by Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson.
Yeah, and the claims in there about an alleged effort, a concerted one, to hide maybe some decline in President Biden's cognitive sharpness.
The book apparently details how people in his inner circle might have been trying to shield him, not just from the public, but maybe even from others in the administration.
And it points to that June debate as a real jaw-dropping moment, apparently.
Mm-hmm. And the lead up to it, too, like him arriving late, seeming maybe less prepared than usual.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, the book apparently says he showed up really late, skipped the usual practice walkthrough, maybe suggesting, overconfidence. Like he didn't need the prep.
And then there are these other anecdotes, supposedly from within the administration, even cabinet secretaries, worrying about his ability to handle the job.
Forgetting names, things like that. Jake Sullivan, George Clooney were mentioned.
Right, those kinds of examples, which naturally brings up the medical checks again.
Were cognitive tests part of his regular checkups early on? The sources suggest maybe not until later.
Which seems, noteworthy, given the concerns being raised both publicly and apparently privately.
And then you have Sky News Australia chiming in, saying the timing of this cancer diagnosis news coming out feels, quote, curious.
Curious how?
Well, curious in light of the book's claims about cognitive decline. Like, is one meant to distract from the other? Or maybe explain it. It fuels that kind of speculation.
It's fascinating, isn't it? How these two threads, physical health and cognitive health, they both feed into this larger conversation about presidential fitness, transparency.
Yeah, what do we actually know and why are we told certain things at certain times?
Exactly. The sources you sent, even coming from different angles, they really push you to think about that.
Okay, let's shift gears now. Completely different topic highlighted in your sources. President Trump's recent Middle East trip.
Right. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE.
And the big headline seems to be about economics, huge investment numbers being thrown around.
Huge is right.
Mm-hmm.
The figures reported are pretty staggering, like
Sure.
$600 billion pledged from Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
Yeah, and $243.5 billion from Qatar, another $200 billion from the UAE,
Mm-hmm.
all supposedly aimed at investing in the U.S. The scale is just Massive.
And beyond the money, there was news about Iran.
President Trump apparently confirmed the U.S. gave Iran a nuclear deal proposal.
And there was that quote about Iran needing to move fast
Something bad is going to happen. Yeah, pretty direct language. And he linked it specifically to the U.S. military presence in the UAE. Definitely creates a sense of urgency.
The overall vibe of the trip, though, seemed to be framed as commerce, not conflict.
That was the phrase used, yeah. And you had positive comments reported from the UAE's foreign minister about, increased trust, more investment. It suggests maybe a focus on building those economic bridges alongside the usual security stuff.
There are also those sort of side notes like Trump touring the Grand Mosque in the UAE wearing shoes.
Yeah, and the mosque being closed just for him.
Yeah.
Little details, maybe, but
Yeah.
they can speak volumes about the kind of reception and relationship being built.
And Secretary of State Rubio's comments reinforced that urgency about Iran, saying the window for the deal is limited.
It's quite the contrast, isn't it? You have Trump engaged in this high-stakes international diplomacy, focusing on these big economic deals.
While Biden is facing all this intense scrutiny back home about his health and fitness.
Yeah, very different narratives playing out.
Okay, let's turn to something much heavier now, covered in the sources, the terrible storms and tornadoes in the Midwest.
Just awful news. Kentucky, Missouri, Illinois hit really hard.
The reports mentioned a death toll of at least 27, maybe 28 people. Just tragic.
And the descriptions of the damage. Homes just gone, roofs ripped off, cars smashed, trees uprooted. Total devastation in some areas.
It's always the personal stories that stick with you, though. Like that 8-year-old girl, Ellie, in Kentucky, her house collapsing around her.
And Carol Wells losing the home she'd lived in for 50 years. Just heartbreaking.
It is good to see organizations like Operation Blessing stepping in quickly, though, providing aid, setting up mobile kitchens, that kind of immediate help.
Absolutely vital. These events are devastating, but they also show the importance of community support and that immediate response in the aftermath.
Now, your sources also touched on some FBI and DOJ activities. First, something called Operation Restore Justice.
Yes, that sounded like a significant operation targeting child exploitation.
The numbers were quite high, weren't they? Over 200 arrests.
Yeah, 205 arrests reported, and crucially, the rescue of 115 children. It involved multiple FBI offices focused on crimes like producing and sharing child sexual abuse material. Definitely a major effort.
So that's positive news. But then the focus shifted to the ongoing situation with the Epstein files.
Right. Still questions swirling around the release of those files under DOJ Director Pam Bondi.
It seems like there's some public impatience there, maybe a feeling that things aren't moving fast enough.
Well, the explanation given now seems to be about the sheer volume of material the FBI has to review. Evidence, different formats.
Yeah.
It takes time. It highlights how complex these big investigations really are compared to maybe initial expectations or statements.
Also in the realm of government agencies, there was that appointment at the FDA, Dr. Vinay Prasad.
Yeah, as the new top vaccine official, which is interesting because
But he's been critical of COVID vaccines in the past, right? Especially for kids. And critical of Dr. Peter Marks, who's a big name there.
Exactly. And the sources pointed out this seems to be part of a wider pattern.
What pattern?
Appointing people to lead agencies they've previously criticized. RFK Jr. was mentioned, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya. It makes you wonder about potential shifts in policy or direction within these agencies, doesn't it?
Interesting point. Okay, what about the DOGE initiative? That sounds different.
It does. It's apparently focused on government spending, auditing it, trying to cut waste.
And it had some results.
Seems so. They reported deactivating over 500,000 unused federal credit cards across like 32 agencies.
Wow, 500,000.
Yeah. And they claimed cumulative savings adding up to over $1,000 per taxpayer, which sounds impressive.
But it hit a roadblock.
It did. A group called Democracy Forward challenged its audit of the Social Security Administration. A judge actually halted it.
On what grounds?
Privacy concerns, basically, calling it a fishing expedition. It shows that tension between wanting government accountability and needing to protect people's private information.
And the administration is fighting that ruling?
The previous administration, yes.
Yeah.
They reportedly appealed to the Supreme Court to let the audit continue. So that debate is ongoing.
Okay. Also in the news mix was the NJ Transit rail strike. That seemed to wrap up relatively quickly, thankfully.
Yeah, a tentative deal was reached. It ran from Friday to Tuesday morning, I think. First strike there in over 40 years, apparently.
What was the main issue?
Salary increases, seems like.
Yep.
The usual sticking point. NJ Transit called the agreement fair and fiscally responsible, but the union still needs to vote on it.
Bet commuters were relieved. And probably small businesses along the lines, too.
No doubt. Strikes like that have a ripple effect.
Now, this next one sounds pretty dramatic. A Mexican Navy ship hitting the Brooklyn Bridge.
Yeah, saw the videos of that. Looked really bad. A training ship, apparently, with nearly 300 sailors on board.
And there were fatalities.
Sadly, yes. Reports confirm 2 sailors were killed, others injured. The ship's masts just snapped right off on impact.
Any idea what happened?
Early eyewitness accounts suggested maybe it was moving backward or got separated from a tugboat, but it's all under investigation now by the NTSB. They'll need permission from Mexico to actually board the ship, though.
Okay. On a different note, related to safety online, President Trump signed something called the Take It Down Act.
Yes, that seems aimed at protecting victims of digital exploitation, like revenge porn or those AI-generated deepfakes.
How does it work?
It forces online platforms, social media, websites to remove non-consensual intimate images within 48 hours of being reported.
That seems important. Gives victims more power.
Exactly. And the FTC gets powers to punish companies that don't comply. The First Lady apparently made this a priority, and they highlighted a story of a teenage victim to show why it's needed.
Right. Okay, now a shift back to legal and political matters. The Supreme Court and Venezuelan TPS.
Yeah, this is a significant ruling. The Supreme Court essentially allowed the previous administration's plan to end temporary protected status for over 300,000 Venezuelans to go forward.
Which means?
It potentially exposes them to deportation. It reverses a policy from the more recent administration that had protected them.
That's a huge number of people.
It really is. One lawyer quoted called it the largest single action stripping any group of non-citizens of immigration status in modern U.S. history. So, major implications, not just for Venezuelans, but potentially other TPS holders too.
Wow, okay, nearly through our list. Your sources also included some pretty strong commentary. Rudy Giuliani on James Comey.
Very strong. Called him a traitor and liar on Newsmax, I think it was.
He took responsibility for hiring him, apparently.
Claimed personal responsibility, yeah. And then accused Comey of lying to the FISA court, damaging intelligence gathering, the whole 9 yards. It's clearly still very raw, those political battles.
And Brian Kilmeade on Fox News?
His commentary seemed to pick up on themes from that original Sin book we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
We're talking about a cognitive collapse in the White House, the idea maybe Jill and Hunter Biden were effectively running things, and criticizing Democrats' reactions to the book.
Just reflects how polarized these discussions still are.
Absolutely. These different sources really showcase those deep divides.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. Biden's health, Trump's trip, storms, DOJ stuff, strikes, court decisions. If you had to pull out some main threads connecting all this, what would they be?
Well, a few things jump out, I think. One is definitely this theme of transparency, or maybe the lack of it. Questions about what information we get, especially about powerful figures like the president.
Right. The health questions really highlight that.
For sure. Then there's the clear sense of shifting political winds. You see it in foreign policy focus. Who gets appointed to key government jobs?
Like the FDA appointment.
Exactly. And then there's the undeniable impact of big events on ordinary people's lives. Natural disasters, transit strikes, changes in immigration status. These aren't abstract issues.
They have real consequences.
Definitely. And finally, there are these ongoing tug-of-wars over government power versus individual rights. The DOJ initiative versus privacy concerns, the TPS ruling. These fundamental debates keep surfacing.
So, this deep dive, like always, was about trying to give you, our listener, some clarity, to help make sense of that flood of information you shared with us.
And maybe the thought to leave you with is this. As you hear these stories, think about the narratives being built. What do these events tell us about trust in our institutions? About the information we consume? Which parts of this complex picture make you want to learn more? That exploration, that's really the point.